Right, okay, let's do a quick review then. So me and Mo have just watched the Canelo versus Billy Joe Saunders fight and stayed up after. And now it's 5:26 in the morning, and we are dedicated, and we're going to do a very short review. Mo, first of all, initial thoughts and reaction to BJ Saunders, I guess, putting on his stool, I guess, after damaging his eye in after the eighth round.
Yeah, yeah, I mean, Billy Joe was doing very well in the lead up to him getting that injury and deciding to pull out. I think you and I probably agree that he was doing well enough to likely be ahead on points, although of course the judges thought otherwise. Um, he did pose a few challenges to Canelo, but I think understandably Canelo's obviously a very good power puncher, and eventually the damage was dealt. He did catch Billy Joe a few times early on and in the middle rounds, and it seems like he landed a few very effective punches in those rounds leading up to Billy Joe quitting on his stool. So um, leaves a bit of taste in the mouth because the fight ended so abruptly and it was a massive anticlimax. But at the same time, you probably assume that Billy Joe knows himself best, knows his health best, and if he was to continue with his eye damage like that, it probably fight would probably ended anyway at some point in some fashion, probably in a worse fashion than the way that it already ended for him. So um, you have to give it to Canelo. He did a very good job, but it's interesting to watch at least from a points perspective leading up to him quitting.
Yeah, it was super competitive, as you said. I think we both had a Bijo, I think 5-3 up, going into the
Mm,
ninth round. Obviously, the judges had it very differently to us. Two judges had it 6-2, and another had it 5-3, but all in favor of Canelo. So complete opposite of what we were saying. But I think, look, I mean, that aside, I think even if that was the case, I think no one can dispute the fact that it was extremely competitive. I think Blejo definitely was winning rounds, and he definitely was in the fight. There were times where he made Canelo look silly, made him miss, and then made him pay. Looked very twitchy, looked very switched on. I actually personally thought, um, I think I agree with you. I think maybe the last round or two, Canelo was coming back into it more, but I reckon Billy Joe was a step ahead speed wise to Canelo, and Canelo was getting frustrated. The first round he was really good with the body shots, Canelo, and then
mm,
he kind of went away from that. And the what was it, maybe the sixth and seventh round, he started then to throw. Sorry, the seventh and eighth round, he started to throw the body shots more, and that I think made Billy Joe then kind of dip, and that's where the uppercut came, and that's the shot that did the damage on the eye as well. And I think he realised he needs to throw body shots more. Canelo was getting a bit ahead of himself, trying to swing wildly. I think he was expecting to get Bijo out there in 3-4 rounds, and it was a lot harder than he anticipated. And then I think he reset himself. But in saying that, Billy Joe I thought was really good with the jab. Headman was very good. Yes, I think we at times we were like, "What are you doing? His hands are down. This is crazy. Like he's gonna get knocked. He could get knocked out." But there's a bit of the
mm,
Tyson Fury yes about him. But look, I think as you said, it was just really unfortunate he got stopped, or they stopped it. But if he's
mm.
fractured his eye socket, then you can't carry on. You couldn't see out of one eye, and if it's that bad, then potentially you could lose your eye, as he said. So Kelbrook had
Yeah,
that, and they
yeah.
pulled him out. And at the time they called him a quitter, and then after they realised actually, and it's the same with Daniel Dubois as well against Joe Joyce. So I think maybe at the time when you watch it as well, the adrenaline is like, oh my god, what are they doing? Like carry on because you've seen all these horrific injuries, people carry on, etc. But
Yeah.
look, I mean, your health is obviously your wealth at the end of the day. So, but it's just a shame because look, I think if the fight goes on, who knows what happens? Yeah, he could get stopped. I mean, but he could also, he's not going to stop Canelo, but he could take it 12 rounds. And look, I mean, if he gets robbed, he gets robbed. But
Mm,
given the scorecards at the stoppage, he probably would have got robbed. But even
mm,
if he'd fought in the same vein, but in
mm,
saying that, people would know. Look, you know what? Like Arizona Lara, like Austin Trout, that's a mark on Canelo to say actually you probably lost that one, but you got a bit jammy with the scorecards.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is. I mean, I'll ask you actually: is there any? It's not going to happen because he's obviously going to go and fight Caleb Plant now for the undisputed super middleweight straps now, Canelo. But in your eyes, is there an appetite? For example, if Billy Joe recovers from that eye injury, do you think he warrants a rematch given that performance, or do you think it's move that was difficult for Canelo, move on now?
Yeah, I don't think he warrants a rematch from that performance. Don't get me wrong, he obviously put on a very good performance, and as we suggested, we did think he was winning on the scorecards. But who wants to watch a fight as a rematch when the first fight involved one of the fighters deciding to quit on his stool because he was injured? It kind of I don't come across many rematches like that. Um, what are the rematches that people actually care about? Tyson Fury getting knocked down, coming back up from the ashes, and managing to continue to fight on until the whole rounds are exhausted, or Canelo Golovkin going at it, going the whole distance, and then there's definitely an appetite for a rematch because there's a lot of controversy over who actually won. Look, we're British fans. We were backing Saunders. We may think he was winning on points, but at the end of the day, we don't dispute the fact that he lost this fight because Canelo um, did administer the damage that led to Billy Joe quitting on his stool. There's nothing controversial about it. There's no real appetite for a rematch as a result of it. There's usually an appetite for a rematch if there's some level of controversy or there's a lot of discussion about who really won it and let's settle this, etc. And let's be honest, there's no such discussion for this fight. Billy Joe did lose. It's not a controversial thing. Um, and it's really difficult to market that type of fight. Billy Joe decides to quit on his stool. Let's settle this. It just it doesn't really work that way, and you do wonder whether Billy Joe is gonna come back because I recall you mentioning as soon as you looked at him walking away, you thought that's it. He's not going to fight again. I remember you saying that. So you do think, is he actually going to fight again? What fights does he have
So,
left?
so, so, so
Canelo
he,
was the biggest fight he'll ever have now, probably. I
so
don't think
he's a
there's a
two.
bigger fight than Canelo.
Yeah, I mean he's a two-weight world champion. Obviously, he was missing those marquee names from his resume, and realistically, like his whole career has been built on saying, you know what, I will beat Golovkin, I'll beat Canelo, just give me the chance, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
I think, if I'm being honest with you, if he'd fought Canelo at middleweight at the time, which was like 3 4 years ago, where he was calling him out, I reckon he probably would have won. Because
Mm,
I personally don't think, and it sounds harsh, but I don't think Billy Joe Saunders has improved since then. I think once he fights against someone of that caliber, his level does get raised. But I think he's already at a very high level. But I don't. I think his ceiling, he's got a ceiling. That's it.
mm,
Canelo has continually improved, and I think
yeah.
unfortunately the move up to super middleweight is probably suited as well Canelo a bit more than Billy Joe. But in saying that, I mean, I don't know. Look, Canelo still could have won that, but what I would say, and I agree with you, and that's why I did say it, is where does he go? Like, genuinely, where does he go? I think there's probably two fights. There's only two fights that he
Don't
could be
take
up
it.
for. It
Don't
could be
take
Golovkin.
Golovkin. Don't take
Golov,
Golovkin.
well, Golovkin's old, right? That he could do
No,
it.
but I mean,
He
he's
could
gonna.
box and move. He could
I
pop
feel
him
like
if he's
Golovkin
right.
knows exactly where to go, and it's that eye, and I'm sure that eye won't fully recover. He'll go straight for
So,
the eye again.
so that's true. Golovkin, or the other one is, which everyone in Britain want to see, but if in his eyes it'll probably be a step down, a big step down. Eubank Jr. The rematch, which was very close.
There's an appetite for that, but the danger is if he loses that one as well, it puts him even further down, doesn't he? The risk of him losing
Yeah.
against Eubank Jr. would be like all that hard work
Hmm.
all the way up to the Canelo fight kind of gets dismissed in a way because it's almost like
Hmm.
he's actually going down in
Yeah.
in stature in terms of how good he is if he just loses and then loses again to someone that he originally beat. So I don't think he would beat Golovkin. I think Golovkin would administer more damage than Canelo, to be fair.
What do you think?
Um, but especially given he's got an injury
The heavy
now, and I think
hands.
that injury won't repair. It will take it. Things like that probably take years. They probably never are the same again. You
I
know.
see it's a metal plate like Kell Brook.
Oh yeah, I mean you know what happened to Kell Brook
Yeah.
after that Golovkin fight. That was
No,
it.
no, but after the Golovkin fight, wasn't that Errol Spence did his other eye socket? That's what happened. It was a separate one. It was a different one.
That was just
Horace has asked a couple of questions or comments. He just said, since Canelo was pushed back by Golovkin in the first fight, he's always on the front foot now. So even when he's losing, it doesn't look that bad. So I think that's what you mentioned, which is like he always comes forward and shows pressure. So even if he's not throwing, that always looks. A lot of judges like pressure,
yeah.
right? It depends what you like, and it seems that in every Canelo fight, every judge likes pressure. And I'm not saying like I'm not trying to allude to the fact that there's bias, even though there definitely is, but it's just some judges definitely like that.
Unless
Uh,
it's Mayweather, then judges do not like pressure.
that's what I mean. Yeah,
They
where the
like
money
slick
is.
boxing.
Yeah, and Haratasha says, "What great fighter is Saunders?" That's a really interesting. So I mean, obviously you've got your elites, got world class, you've got European, and then you've got domestic. What do you think, Mo? Where does he rank? And
Probably between European and world class.
that's a bit harsh between European and world class.
Probably on net. I'd rank
He's
him
got to
world
be
class,
world
but like
class.
just like at the very, very, very top
I don't,
end
no, no,
of
but I'll tell
Europe.
you, surely
I,
he's got to be
I mean,
world class. I'll
I
tell
mean,
you why.
he beat a lot of world class.
Yeah.
Okay, it depends. Who do you categorize as world class fighters along
No,
with him
so
in this?
so elite is your Canelos, your Golovkins. Then below that, world class is your
Well, then, yeah,
King
then
of France, your
naturally Saunders
Billy Joe.
falls in world class. Then,
Yeah,
if that's how you're categorizing it,
yeah,
then
yeah.
fine.
Because who else is elite? I mean, elite it has to be Canelo, right? It's your pound for pounders.
Fair, okay. I mean,
Yeah.
depends how you class world class, I guess, because world class almost sounds like elite to me in a way.
No, no, no. So, yeah, sorry.
Uh,
In my eyes, it's elite, world class, European, domestic. That's kind of how I class it.
uh, Fine then. Well, yeah, well, I guess world class then.
Yeah, yeah. Before I get booted by people saying, "How can you call him European?" And Horace says, "He says, so will no one ever beat Canelo, man?" I'll put that to you, Mo. I mean,
No,
obviously
I
we
don't think
talked
so.
about Billy Joe, but you don't think so for the rest of his career. You don't think? I think you
I
said
think
this
he'll
in
be
the.
undefeated for the rest of his career, and that's it.
Mm, that's it. Mm. It's interesting because I think currently I don't think there's anyone that beats him. I think only if he moves up to light heavyweight, which will be towards the end of his career. But Beterbiev is 35, 36. So realistically, Beterbiev's probably got maximum 2, 3 years. Canelo will just he'll do one or two things. He'll just never fight him, or he'll wait until he's older, like Kovalev, and then just fight him then and then knock him out. Simple. Like in Kovalev, like it's just very, very smart matchmaking. But yeah, and I guess
I think Canelo's smart enough not to fight people when he gets old
no,
as
no, no.
well.
As in, yeah, that's true. As in, yeah, I think he's definitely clever enough not to fight killers when he's old.
Yeah,
That's the thing, isn't it? Like he's not going to fight a Beterbiev-esque person who's in his prime when he's 35.
yeah,
When
yeah.
Canelo's 35, that is. But yeah. Um, Mo, then I'll just go to you for the last few. Where we talked about potentially where Breeder goes. What do
hmm
you think he should do if you were advising Breeder Saunders? What do you tell him to do?
Well, I mean, firstly, it depends on how bad the eye socket is, doesn't it? I mean, first thing you need to do is rest and allow your eye to heal, and then you have to figure out how bad it is. If it's so bad that it's advised that he doesn't step foot in a ring again, then you can't advise him to go and have fights. If it's good enough that he can recover, then he certainly shouldn't take the two fights that you've suggested as his next fight. He should take something slightly a step. Well, okay. Eubank Jr. maybe he could take as his next fight, but Golovkin certainly not. I
Yeah.
wouldn't
No.
go
So
from Canelo
the,
to Golovkin.
my suggestion was that I mean, he won't get the Golovkin fight after just losing to Canelo anyway. But
Of course,
my suggestion was like take one or two fights in between that, to, like
that
good
that's
wins where
that's
he's below, and then go to that.
that's what I'm saying. Yeah. So basically, if he wants to take, for example, Eubank Jr., then have a few tune-up fights before that. Get yourself back into the rhythm of winning again and get your confidence back up again, and then take those fights if you want. But don't know if you'll have the motivation, to be honest. Because once you fight someone like Canelo, which is what your whole career was kind of leading up to in a way, and you've just lost, and obviously he looks completely devastated as you would be. The last thing on his mind is what's next. He's probably going to be depressed, if I'm perfectly honest, for the next few weeks or however long. It's good that he's got someone like Fury by his
Yeah,
side to cheer
agreed.
him up and to kind of talk to him about it. Yeah, you don't know really. I would
He
if he whoever he fights, I'll watch him again. I mean, it's nice to watch Saunders, to be honest. But I don't think he'll I don't think he'll be back at that level. As in,
yeah,
he won't be back at like you won't see a Canelo rematch or anything like that.
no,
Like, so
no,
it depends what he wants to do. Obviously, you know, I know you say he doesn't care about money as much and things like that, but
yeah,
you know, if you want to, he's got enough. Um, he's got enough in him to make some money from some extra fights before he does
yeah,
retire if he wants to do that. So he should try and make use of his worth because it's not like his values completely dropped after that Canelo fight. He still comes across as a very competent fighter as a
yeah,
result of that Canelo fight. So you know,
yeah, yeah. I think the one thing for me is that with Billy Joe, realistically, um, he was avoided, and probably not avoided because maybe Golovkin and Canada didn't think they'd beat him, but more because it was perceived, oh, he's not a particularly exciting fight, and what does he really bring, etc. Like it's like the who needs him club, right? Like he's a slick
mm,
boxer, Southboy's tricky. Why would I fight him when I don't really need to? But what happened here is that he had a belt, which is the reason why
mm,
Canada then fought him. The issue for him is that realistically he'll still be in that club. So unless he gets a world title again, he's not going to be able to get Golovkin like anytime soon. Eubank Jr. I mean, that's probably a fight that's always on the table, but again, realistically, I don't, I don't know. I mean, there's definitely appetite, as you said, but I'd, I, w- I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see him again. And the reason why I say that is because if you hear him speak in the interviews before this, he said, and this is a direct quote. He said, "I would take beating Canelo, right, and dying 10 minutes later than lose." And you might say, okay, he's exaggerating a little bit, but if you listen to him in the lead up to this about how much winning means to him, like
yeah,
genuinely,
yeah, I know.
like there's some people that are just like that, and he genuinely sounded like someone who. So when
It's
he
his
lost
first
the
loss. Let's not forget as
Yeah,
well. His first
it's his
professional
first
loss.
loss as a pro, right? His O's gone, and he lived off that. It was him and Tyson Fury used to say, no, how many posts have we seen from both of them saying, no, two Gypsy Warriors, undefeated, etc. And that was what they used to live off, saying, you know what, and like fair enough, like that's understandable, but when he lost in the Olympics as an 18-year-old. The guy that he lost to and the guy who won the Olympics, he'd beaten a couple of months back. He was one of the favourites going into the Olympics. That's how talented a fighter he is. And he said, like, when he lost that, he was so disappointed in himself because he could have done more.
Mm,
And I just hope he doesn't feel that way here. I don't think he will because I think that I think he does look devastated because he's probably thinking, why did the eye go? Like, if it hadn't gone, at least I would have taken it to 12. And in his eyes, he probably would have potentially won the fight. I mean, in our eyes, he probably would have because he only needed two more rounds out of
mm.
the next whatever it was five. So couple of good rounds, and that's it. But look, I mean, it's definitely disappointing. It's unfortunate, and realistically, as I said, I wouldn't be surprised if he just says, "Look, I've been to the mountaintop. I haven't made it." How old is he? He's 31. So he's probably got at those weights, considering how he, apart from this camp, in the past, he's always ballooned up in weight as well.
Mm.
He'll definitely balloon up in weight after this. I'm telling you now, 100%. So realistically, he's probably, if he was to fight on, he's probably got another 3-4 years maximum, I would say, left in him, considering the way he's lived his life. I mean, can he get to that mountaintop again? Probably not. So then he might think to himself, well, what's the point? I've got enough money. I've just got a
Mm.
huge payday from Canelo. Yes, it hasn't gone the way I wanted, but I've got enough money in the bank. Why do I need to carry on? And I've taken
Yeah,
my loss. That's it. Like, I've got nothing else. Like,
motivation's
genuinely,
gone.
like, but like genuinely, like, what else can he do now to consolidate a so-called legacy? Is those is fight the guys like the Golovkins, Chris Eubank Jr. will be seen as a domestic fight. Chris Eubank Jr. is not, in my eyes, he's not an elite fighter. 100%, he's not,
It's
and
kind
he's
of like,
fringe on level.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, why does Khan not fight Brook? Same kind of question
But
in a
it's just,
way.
again, this is not being rude to Brook,
Yeah,
but it's widely known that Khan has done a lot more in his career than Brook has. Brook was a very talented fighter, but he'd never. I think apart from the Sean Porter win, I think everyone sees Kell Brook as someone who was not a wasted talent, but didn't fulfill as much as, as he could have. Kell Brook, whereas Amir Khan is someone who he pushed himself against everyone. He fought everyone at all times. You know, like he challenged himself at all times as well. Yes, he got at times he got knocked out, but that doesn't matter, right? It was just a case of like, you
mm.
know what? He beat Maidana. He beat a prime Maidana.
Yeah. No,
Maidana,
to be
like,
honest,
that's
yeah, that's pretty
unbelievable.
sick.
Like
Yeah, I
he, beat-
mean,
he dude, he beat Zab Judah.
after you look at what Maidana did to Mayweather in the first fight, it becomes more, yeah, more
Apparent,
amazing to
it
think. Yeah,
becomes apparent how good. Like he genuinely at the time was the best 140 pounder in the world. So
yeah,
like we're talking about light welterweight. And Kell
yeah.
Brook, yes, like fantastic win over Sean Porter, I understand, but definitely hasn't had the caliber of wins as Khan, and that's
So
why.
you can see the analogy I'm trying to make.
Yeah, yeah, exactly,
It's,
and,
it's,
and I
it's
agree with you.
unless Saunders wants a few more paychecks, and he's more than entitled to have those paychecks, because why not? Um, he's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna reach that mountaintop again. Um, I probably think that's gonna be his mindset. Um, it's a bit of a sad ending in a weird way, but it's not to discredit everything that he's gone through. He's obviously he's a world level fighter. He's up there, but I don't think he's going to fight Golovkin. Golovkin's probably the only other person that is worth fighting in that kind of elite category. He's probably the only other fighter in the elite category.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, I mean, wouldn't be surprised if he hangs up his gloves after this either, to be honest. But no, you know, no discredit or disrespect to him. He's obviously had a
yeah,
very nice career.
yeah,
He's a good fighter. It's just unfortunate end, and he
yeah,
he knows himself best. Especially if you said that if I had to pick between losing and winning winning against Canelo and dying 10 minutes later, I'd take that. Then there's no doubt that he didn't quit on his stool in a careless way. He obviously could not continue because
yeah,
he's the type of guy who probably would actually just he'd probably try and win or die trying type of guy. So
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. It
What's
is
next
sad.
for Canelo though?
Caleb Plum, undisputed.
After that, assuming he wins,
I don't know. I
he's
mean,
got all the belts. What does he do then? Golovkin
he,
3.
he yeah, he'll probably he'll just knock out Golovkin when he's like 42 years old. But no, I mean, he he won't go down to middleweight. Let's be honest, he won't go down to middleweight again. I think he's probably outgrown that. The only next thing is light heavyweight, but he said that he wants to be at super middleweight for quite a long time. So I don't know. I mean, maybe you see some of the middleweights move up, like the Charlos, like one of the Charlos who's in middleweight at the moment. He can move up. That's a quite big fight in the US. Demetrius Andre can move up to a super middleweight as well. I mean, that's another fight that maybe Billy Joe could get, but again, that fight has been talked about a lot. But without a belt, I don't know if Andre will fight him now after just taking a loss as well. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting one, but I think he'll probably stay at super middleweight for a couple more years, then maybe have a few years at light heavyweight. But it depends who's at light heavyweight. There's some killers there. There really are some killers there. But Bivol as well is at light heavyweight. He can move down to super middleweight. Are people saying that he could? Like he's quite small for light heavyweight. He could fight Canelo as well. I don't know. Let's see. Let's see how it goes. But he seems like an unstoppable force. Mo, I'm just going to wrap up the reviews. Anything you want to touch upon the review before we wrap up?
No, that's all from me.
Cool. Thank you very much, Mo. Guys, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel, of course, as well. Click the notification bell as well. Thank you very much. Okay.